Review Subcommittee for Education to order. We have a very full agenda this morning. This is meeting number 5. It's hard to believe that the interim is almost over. I do want to take a moment and introduce a new staff member to this committee. Savannah Wiley to my left is working with us on this committee now, and good to have Savannah with you, and looking forward to a lot of great discussions going forward. At this time, I'll ask if Amy could call the roll.
Senator Kerr. Senator Parrott. Senator Wise.
Present remotely out of district.
Thank you. Representative Banta.
Present remotely in district.
Thank you. Representative Bojanowski.
Present in the room.
Thank you. Representative Bridges. Representative Fleming. Representative Flood.
Present from the 75th District.
Thank you. Representative McCool.
Here in the room.
Thank you. Representative Miller.
Here in the room.
Representative Palumbo. Senator McDaniel. Representative Petrie. Representative Reed. Representative Huff.
Joining you from outside of my district.
Thank you. Senator West. Representative Riley.
Present remotely.
Thank you. Chair Tipton.
Present in the room. Do we have enough members for quorum? At this time, members, you should have had a copy of the minutes from our September 24th meeting in your meeting materials. Do I hear a motion on the minutes?
So moved.
Senator Parrott, I believe a second by Representative Flood. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Our first item on the agenda this morning, I'll explain this agenda item a little bit. Over the time I've been chair, the last 5 years, we've had this presentation a couple of times before. But, people come to us and they're asking us for appropriations. Well, just as important are things that we can do as a legislature to help allow universities to be more efficient, to reduce their costs. So I've asked if the presenters will come forward at this time, ask for a presentation. We're going to have a presentation from Dr. Thompson and Dr. McFadden from EKU. I see Dr. Fraker's at the table as well on some suggestions that we might possibly consider. So please identify yourself for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Chair Tipton. Good morning, committee. Good to see everyone. I have with me Aaron Thompson, President of the Council on Post-Secondary Education. I have with me, to my left, I want to introduce Dr. Jennifer Fraker, who is now the lead person of our legislative team at CPE. You're going to see her a lot. You probably are familiar with her from her many days in the Kentucky Department of Education. And I'm proud to say I stole her, and I'm happy about that. I'm celebrating that. So she's with us, and we have Dr. David McFadden, who's the president of Eastern Kentucky University. So good to see everyone. Chair Tipton, as you all know, we've had discussions for many years now on regulatory and statutory relief that allows, and some of these have been on the books for a long time, as you all know, and we're bringing to you today the edition number 2, if you want to call it that. But a while back, you gave us some relief, and that was a benefit tremendously. So we're bringing to you a few other items. But I'd be remiss if I didn't actually say that we want to report a little bit about what higher education has done. We won't go in great detail. I think you've asked us to come back at a later date to go in greater detail, but I do want to give you some quick updates before I let Dr. McFadden take over and present the regulatory relief. COVID has been rough on a lot of folk. Higher education is no different. I'm proud to say, though, that we've done some things in conjunction with our governmental officials, true enough, but we've done some things in higher ed, presidents, myself, and others, to make some policies and protocols that have kept us fairly safe. So we have produced less positivity rates than the wider community, and we're proud of that, because we believe that the most important way of thinking about what we do is to make sure that our students have the kind of academic, social, emotional, and cultural sort of opportunity to be as successful as they can, because we know the most direct relationship to good economy is a strong educated workforce. And so I'm proud of the presidents agreeing with me to come to that conclusion, and we have been fully open. We haven't closed once. We may have gone virtually, but we've been back face to face. Have we learned a lot during this time? Yes. Have we created innovation as we were going along? Yes. Do we have more innovation to create based on what we are getting from this time? Absolutely. So we're happy to be here with you today to talk just for a second about that. Quickly, I'll just tell you some of the things that we've done in the last few years, and once again, I hope you do bring us back to go in more detail. In last 3 years, we've had the lowest tuition in over 20 years, actually closer to 30 years. We've made tremendous progress toward closing the gaps in higher education. As a matter of fact, faster than almost any other state, if not faster than any other state.
President Thompson,
Yes.
if you excuse me, your slide presentation is not on the screen, is not on
Oh.
our screens. We'll see if we can get that rectified.
Well, I see Representative Flood, which is probably a lot better than my slide presentation. You can tell I normally don't look at slides when I talk. I can promise you my PhD isn't in PowerPoint or technology.
Okay, I know we've got the presentation up. I believe you're ready to go now.
Oh, thank you. Once again, getting back, we've had the lowest tuition in almost 30 years, and we're proud of that. And we're coming in significantly below the last 3 years, even the inflation rate. I'm proud of that. Affordability is an issue we need to be concerned about. Whether it's the perception of affordability or there's real issues with many of our students, especially low income, around this issue. Higher ed has taken on this task, and one of the ways they've done this is truly agreeing to a low tuition, but the second way is they've increased their institutional aid tremendously, and we, down the road, will show you a slide on that, actually outnumbering much of the state aid and federal aid. We've also, as I said, made big improvements in gap closing in areas of retention, graduation, in areas of educational attainment. Over the last few years, we've had about a 17.5% increase in educational attainment overall, and as an example, about a 37% increase in our underrepresented minorities. So, as I said, we're proud to say we're closing gaps faster than any state, or if not, we're at the top with others, a few others. Our STEM H degrees are growing at unprecedented rates because you all told us this is what you need. You told us you need more short-term certificates that are quality. And we just did a report to look to make sure we had quality in it that would produce the kind of immediate workforce that we need and the skill ups that we need for some of our manufacturing especially, but healthcare and other areas. And we have a long way to go, and hopefully we can have some conversation about building the pipeline for what we haven't done. Our high school students are taking more dual credits. Chair Tipton, this has been a conversation that you've been heavily engaged in. And I'm proud to say that we are aligning our dual credit with degree pathways. You saw that we just got a big grant to do Purpose First sort of advising that will even do this more. But this has been a 75% increase in the last few years, and we're proud of that. And there's a lot more we can do, and we look forward to working with you in order to do that. The next two slides I won't spend a lot of time on. I'm just going to, you can look at it, but just gives you an example of how we have reduced tuition increases over the last few years. And whenever I retire, whenever that may be, I'm proud to say that's one of the accomplishments that we've been able to put forth. Next slide, please. This gives you an example of the URM credentials. If you look at those by numbers, we can give you the percentages, sound good, but we'll give you the numbers. And as you all know, that during the COVID time, most of the people on unemployment did not have a college credential. You also know that many people that are on Medicaid or on SNAP or whatever don't have a college credential. Our argument is fairly simple, and we appreciate the budget you gave us last time, that you all are actually funding the solution here. When you talk about funding higher ed and performance funding in other ways, as well as with dual credit and some of the other things we're doing, we are the solution to much of the problems that we spend a lot of money on. Next slide, please. If you look at our STEM H degree growth, this is tremendous. We got a lot more to do here. Now, I want to be clear to those that have asked me when I presented the slide, do we still think that the arts are important? My son is a great artist. I would ask you to look him up and buy his work, please. But, of course not. This is talking about a holistic picture, but we are needing to actually increase this area. It's still a primary area we're working on. It doesn't mean we're demeaning any other degree or any other program by no stretch of the imagination, but it does mean that I'm the chair of Baptist Health, and I can tell you we can use about 750 nurses now if you got some in your back pocket. I mean, we've got to do a better job of increasing this area, and we're going to keep working on that. Next slide, please. So I'm going to let President McFadden take over. I will just say I appreciate, Chair Tipton, you're inviting us back to actually talk a little bit about this. We got a couple of big items on here. Many are small items, but all items make a difference. Dr. McFadden.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. Mr. Chair, it is good to be with you today. We have had the good pleasure to work together for many years now on a multitude of different initiatives in and around higher education. I first and foremost want to say to this body, to the legislature, thank you for your support of higher education. We have seen unprecedented success, and we benefit from a lot of support from this body in order to do that work. Some big announcements in Kentucky over the last few weeks, a lot of opportunities, a very bright future in many ways. I want you to know that on behalf of my colleagues that our public institutions stand ready to power that workforce for what's next in Kentucky. And so we want to be committed to being a part of that solution. And many times, I was in an event a few weeks ago, and as a university president, it doesn't matter what question you perhaps ask a policymaker, they tend to answer, well, we wish we had more money. And this is one of those opportunities where we can talk about something other than money, because there are some things that stand in the way of doing business and doing business more effectively and more efficiently on our campuses. And so these are consensus recommendations from our public institutions that we bring forward today for consideration as we think about moving into the 2022 legislative session and what we would consider a regulatory relief bill for higher education. First, we'll start with vendor forms. We're looking to modify KRS 45A 695 to eliminate the requirement for vendors to complete and sign a personal services contract invoice. Now, all of the information that comes on this document is already provided in the invoice that's provided to the institution. It's duplicative and in many ways slows down the process of processing that. So it has to come here and come through that process when that invoice is already on hand with all the necessary information that's being requested there. Next, student IDs. We would modify KRS 61931 6D. This was a bill that came forward a few years ago, and it triggered a security incident unnecessarily, since our student IDs are protected against the misuse of personal information already. So this was a personal information protection bill geared around Social Security numbers, geared around driver's license, geared around some of those specifics. Unfortunately, there was a line in there that included all other forms of identification, which threw student IDs into that. We would ask that either university IDs be exempted or that we would remove that catch-all phrase at the end of 61931 6D. Next comes open records. We're requesting to match KRS 61880 language, which has the appeal timeline for open records requests with 61846, the 60-day appeal timeline for open meetings. The problem is currently there is no timeline for this appeal, and so those can linger on forever. And so we would ask that we would institute that 60-day timeline, much as we do in 61846. Next is disposal of property. This is a conversation we've had before, and we've done this in budget bills, and given that 2-year authority to return that real property sale proceeds to the funding source, we're asking that would be permanently put into statute so we don't have to ask for that language to be included in every budget bill as our universities and community colleges acquire and then dispose of real property. Next is printing. I don't know how many of you know this, many of you may, but KRS 57091 requires the governor's signature on the approval of all state printing contracts. So if we print pamphlets, if we print booklets, if we do anything to print anything on our campus with a new vendor, it requires a gubernatorial signature. As you can imagine, that slows down the process, and in many times we sometimes have to produce things perhaps for this body, perhaps for others, in a more timely fashion, and we feel like that our personal services contracts more than adequately covers the acquisition and procurement of those services. Next is modifying tuition waivers. There are still many tuition waivers out there benefiting certain affinity groups, benefiting even some of our own employees in higher education. We're asking that those would be treated as last dollar in scholarships, meaning that students who participate and use that would have to fill out the FAFSA, that all federal and state aid would be applied to that account prior to the institution waiving the balance of their attendance at our institutions. Next is lease reporting. We're asking that we would increase the threshold on capital leases and reporting to capital projects and bond oversight, all of which get reported from $100,000 to $200,000, which makes this consistent with the language that is in the biennial budget as it is. As you can imagine, some of our capital leases, whether it be for printing services, whether it be for temporary spaces, whether it be for other services that we do off of our campuses, often exceed that $100,000 limit, and we would ask that we would just align that with what the legislature has required in the biennial budget reporting. Next comes lease terms. We're requesting more flexibility on lease terms, including extending the number of optional renewal terms and also allowing the universities and KCTCS to waive the 30-day cancellation requirement. The reason being, we are always in negotiation, whether it be with a software vendor, whether it be in real property, whether it be in the work we do with student success initiatives, whether it be in partnership with KCTCS. Often that 30-day waive requirement is one that is a sticking point and is always something that gets negotiated either in or out or has a very, very steep penalty associated with it. We're asking that you trust us to make good decisions on having the ability to enter into those contracts that don't exceed the normal timeline, but would allow us to not have that 30-day exemption requirement in it. Capital projects, we raised this threshold, I think, about 7 or 8 years ago a bit. I think at one point in time that was a $250,000 limit. We raised that to $1 million. We're asking to increase the Capital Projects and Bond Oversight Committee capital project reporting threshold for public institutions from $1 million to $2.5 million. As we look at the cost of doing business and the normal activities that we are engaged with, there is a lot of those activities that easily small projects that we spend our own funds on, that it's hard to do anything on a university campus for less than $1 million these days. So we're asking to raise that threshold. And then the last one is very, very important to us. There were some conversations with members of leadership in both chambers prior to the special session, also conversations with the executive branch. But we are currently working through class action lawsuits that have been filed against all of our public institutions in Kentucky as it relates to tuition and fees that were levied in the spring of 2020. We have seen many pick up this class action suit. We're defending that as an amicus brief with the University of Kentucky, who's currently in court. The rest of us have not entered into the court phase of that yet, but we're asking for some immunity protections for moving from face-to-face to virtual instruction for that period of time, and we're asking for retroactive treatment to that as part of this regulatory relief bill that also includes some COVID-19 immunity for our public institutions. There was a lot done by the General Assembly to support our small businesses and many of our other operating entities as it relates to COVID immunity. This was something that did not make it into that in the 2021 General Assembly and also was not part of the special session call here just recently. I think that wraps up our regulatory relief measures. And Mr. Chair, I'd take any questions, and I'm sure Dr. Thompson would as well.
Well, thank you, President McFadden, and you kind of maybe answered the first question I had, and that's about Senate Bill 5, which passed in the 2021 session and was extended in the special session. So basically, and I'm not an attorney, so I'll defer maybe to somebody who has more expertise on this. So what you're saying is that the liability protections offered in Senate Bill 5 are not covering the universities like in these class action lawsuits.
Yeah, this was about delivery of services, not health and safety and well-being of the individuals who perhaps were consuming the services. So yeah, we would need some additional here. And this is a national phenomenon that has happened, and we definitely want to protect our public institutions in this setting. All of us put our best foot forward, made that transition to virtual instruction in the spring of 2020, and we all came back to face-to-face instruction in the fall of 2020. So everyone did their level best to manage something that there's no playbook for. So
one other question I have, then we have some questions from members. Could you expand a little bit on the tuition waiver issue? Explain for the members that may not be aware how that works, who pays the cost, and what type, and maybe examples of what some of these waivers are.
Absolutely. So there are currently a number of waivers that are on the statutes waiving tuition and fees for the children of deceased first responders, waiving tuition and fees for some who come from our foster system, waiving tuition and fees for some who work in certain professions like technical education. And so there are a number of these that are on the books. They are unfunded mandates, meaning that the universities front the bill to cover the entire cost for those individuals to pursue education opportunity on our campuses. For us, what we're asking here is that we still want to do that, but we're simply asking that those dollars we put in to cover that would be the last dollars that would go in, meaning that the individual would apply for FAFSA, that they would apply and use their SEEK dollars. They would use their SEEK dollars. They would not SEEK their KEYS dollars. Sorry, wrong. KEYS and CAP and KDG, and then of course Pell and any other federal awards, and then we would bring in the balance of that to cover, because many end up not applying for anything because they know that their tuition and fees are free. So
we have a question from Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to know a little bit more. You talk about printed materials that the governor has to sign. Is that all universities? What type of printed material are you talking about?
Any printed service contract that is a new contract has to be signed by the governor. And my understanding is that is applicable, I think, to all state agencies, I do believe.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Next question is from Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Thompson, Dr. McFadden, thank you all very much for coming here. You always gives really good information. I more appreciate the tour down at EKU and going through the aviation center. It really enlightened me, and I really appreciate all the efforts y'all put in. Gentlemen, could y'all give me sort of an idea of what the universities have in play in terms of cost containment measures and managing the assets?
Yeah, I think that, from a practical standpoint on our campuses, we're always evaluating the efficacy of the contracts that we have for services, our quality protocols, our QoS, for those who come in and provide deferred maintenance services, who do everything from, facilities to landscaping to even our quality controls for how we process financial aid. And so, I feel like that in looking over the last decade, as Dr. Thompson has indicated, is we're keeping tuition really low across our institutions. We also have seen some fairly lean times as a state, as we've seen other things push in on the state budget, from K-12 needs to pensions to corrections to Medicaid. And so we've done more with less. So I think all of us are focused every day on delivering on that promise of being good stewards of those invested dollars, both by the students and by the state. Obviously, these are big enterprises. We are in charge of the health and well-being for us of over 4,000 students who live on our campus, another 10,000 who frequent the main campus every day. And so we strive every day for those efficiencies that we can find. And we've brought forth one regulatory relief bill that we passed, which helped immensely a couple of years ago. This is kind of version 2.0 of that, some things that didn't make it in last time that continue to be challenges for us that we feel like add time, both human resources and actual dollars out the door to do business on a daily basis. And obviously, we don't want to remove controls where we feel like controls help us make the best decisions and keep this body informed. But at the same time, the speed of doing business is faster today than it ever has been before.
And I want to add one piece to that. I know this wasn't exactly the question, Representative Lippman, but I'm going to go with it a little bit and say our students probably are our most important asset. So one of the things we've done in conjunction with our campuses, we've asked them to increase their mental health care. We've asked them to do promise programs, allowing low income to come in with last dollar in to pay nothing. We've asked them to use other resources they have to ensure that they have the wraparound services. When we got rid of developmental education, to give them the tutors and so they can get through faster. So I would argue, in addition to the more solid physical assets, the idea that we're also looking at what resources we can save on these contracts, we want to put it back into student services. And that's the kind of relationship we've been able to develop with the campuses to ensure that they do that.
Well, I concur. I look at you all as basically a small or medium-sized business owner. You've got a people, process, and a product or service, and those three elements really got to work in tandem in order to provide the best ultimate service to your and product to your customers, and your customers are your students. And I understand that, and I appreciate. It sounds like you're all going through a thorough process of looking at your assets to see what the cost-benefit ratios are for each one of those assets in terms of a total cost perspective, so you can reinvest, Dr. Thompson, back into the students, and that's the ultimate goal. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I'll also give CPE a lot of credit as Dr. Thompson is kind of taking the helm there. We continue to collaborate to look at seeing how do we leverage all of our institutions together and finding those efficiencies and those opportunities to bring services to the forefront that serve our students first, but also make the best use of our investment from the state.
Do any other members who are here or online have a question at this time? Well, if not, we thank you for your presentation. I'm sure we will be following up with you to talk about these issues a little more in detail in the near future.
Well, we look forward to it. And once again, we do appreciate the support of higher ed. I know we are not talking budget now, but we do have a budget coming up. Representative McCool knows that we'll be asking for some support there too. So thank you all very much.
All right.
Thank you all.
Very well. Our next item on the agenda is a presentation from Kentucky State University. So if those presenters will come forward, and before they begin, I would like to welcome Representative Graham to our meeting today. After a meeting with the speaker last week and understanding the issues that Kentucky State is going through right now, we felt like it was very prudent, since Representative Graham represents the area of Kentucky State, to have his knowledge and expertise on board. So we're glad to have Representative Graham with us as we navigate through this. And we're just asking for a lot of the presentation I asked for today is about the demographics of the students and the programs that are offered at Kentucky State. I felt like it would be very important for the members to have a good feel for what's going on, what's been accomplished, and where you're trying to go, as well as an update on your financial situation. So if everyone would please introduce yourself for the record and then proceed with the presentation.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Clara Ross Stamps. I'm currently serving as acting president at Kentucky State University.
Aaron Thompson.
Good morning, Chairman. I'm Greg Rush. I'm the Chief Financial Officer and Vice President for Finance Administration at Kentucky State University.
Please proceed.
I'm going to ask Amy how I get our presentation up.
Amy's getting a workout today.
President Thompson, maybe we need to start a certificate program in IT on PowerPoint presentations.
Actually, and I'll be the first one there that's actually taking it.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's,
Can you share?
and then just do the full screen.
And slideshow's on here somewhere. Nope, wrong one. We'll get there.
Or maybe Greg will be the first one to get it.
Yeah, I need it. Let's see.
See it start.
Slideshow.
Slideshows.
There we go.
There we go.
You're still not on the screen, though, I don't think. I think you have to share the screen.
Okay, now.
Thank you, Amy.
Well, again, good morning, everyone. Next slide, Greg. Hit the next slide. And thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. In July, university staff alerted the Board of Regents of some financial concerns at Kentucky State University totaling over $15 million. The board took that information and informed CPE and the governor's office, and their response resulted in a leadership transition at Kentucky State on July 20th, naming me as acting president and Greg Rush as the vice president for finance and administration and CFO. We had a short period of time to ready our campus for the influx of students. Next slide, Greg. And for faculty returning to campus for the first time for face-to-face instruction since COVID-19. Fall encampment, we invited industry experts to campus to focus our conversations around our culture, change, and issues management. We made a commitment as a campus community to work in partnership and transparency. We did have some employee separations right away, resulting in a cost reduction in our payroll around about $800,000. We immediately suspended travel and purchasing and did a hiring freeze for the university. As you all know, Kentucky State maintains two federal designations. One as a historically black college and university, and another as an 1890 land-grant institution. HBCUs were established before the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and gave these institutions the ability to educate African American populations. There are currently 101 HBCUs in our nation. Kentucky State is an 1890 land-grant institution, maintaining the same legal standing as the 1862 institutions. As you know, UK is our fellow land-grant institution in the state. We have the same legal standing. Instead of receiving land, Kentucky State University receives cash, and we have the same mission of education, engagement, and discovery. We maintain membership in SACS COC. We're fully accredited until the year 2029, and we also maintain membership in the Council of Public Liberal Arts colleges. This is extremely important. Kentucky State University offers more than 60 degree programs. Why is this so important? Historically, HBCUs are known for educating African Americans in a wide range of professions, including law, medicine, and STEM. On Monday night, this is homecoming week at Kentucky State University, CREED, the Center for the Research on the Eradication of Educational Disparity, hosted a number of alumni. We had over 100 alumni on the line, from judges, lawyers, doctors, pharmacists, speaking to our students about their time in Frankfort on the college at the Hill and what Kentucky State meant to them. Most impactful for our students were those individuals serving as doctors who said Kentucky State University gave them a second chance. So Kentucky State offers associate to the doctorate of nursing practice degrees. Some of our top majors at Kentucky State University, you'll see nursing is in the top 5. bachelor's in nursing, and our associate degree in nursing, rounded out by business administration, psychology, and criminal justice. Our top graduate programs include business administration, public administration, the doctorate in nursing practice, and a master in environmental studies, and our master's in special education. Our current class of 2021, nearly 57% are KSU undergraduates are Kentucky residents. I know this is extremely important, and so wanted to point out that 57% of this current class come from Kentucky counties. 33% of our students will be the first in their families to earn a college degree. 76% of our previous graduating class were either first-gen, low income, or both. And 54% of our graduates are employed in Kentucky after 3 years of graduation. Some more details on this current class. Kentucky State has had an enrollment increase steadily since 2014, and not only increase in enrollment, but the quality of the students that we are attracting. The average GPA of this class is over 3.1. We have 477 of our undergraduate class are first year, and 596 of those are new students. We have 119 transfer students and 144 graduate students. 473 dual credit enrolled students, as well as over 1,600 continuing students. Again, 57% are Kentucky residents. The top 10 represented counties are listed for you, with Jefferson, Franklin, and Fayette leading the way. And we also have listed our top high schools. Now, this is extremely important and speaks to the mission of Kentucky State University. 82% of this undergraduate class is Pell recipients. That means that they receive no financial support from their family. Our fall-to-fall retention rate is at an all-time high of 70%. This is extremely important and speaks to the resources that Kentucky State has wrapped around its students to ensure their success, from University College, holding tuition steady for our incoming freshman class, and making sure that the students have tutoring and the Thoroughbred Learning Centers to help them achieve their academic outcomes. 37% increase for our new cohort, extremely high among HBCUs. This is the first-time full-time bachelor degree seeking students who complete their degrees within 6 years. Beyond service to our students, Kentucky State University has a greater, broader impact for the Commonwealth. Over 131 million. Our labor impact is 37 million. When this study was done in 2016, over 890 jobs, and our graduate impact is over 27 million. Again, this is some ranking information. Kentucky State University is ranked as a best value among U.S. News and World Reports, and we are 34 among historically Black colleges and universities. At this time, I will turn it over to CFO Rush.
Greg, before you start, we do have a question.
Okay.
From Senator Parrott, maybe on this portion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. President Stamps, welcome. And my question is, as a land-grant university, are you still working with the regional small farmers in this area? And I don't know what that area is, how big that is, but I just making sure you're still focused on that part of that.
Absolutely, yes, sir, we are. Yeah. We are in 22 counties, and we have our Small Farmers Conference, which is upcoming. We'll have Dean Pumper here tomorrow presenting as well. Awesome. But yes, sir, we work with our small and disadvantaged farmers.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
While we're on the subject, just a question. On the 37% graduation rate, how does that compare to, say, 5-10 years ago?
Ooh, 8.
We had 9% and 13%.
I knew it was a substantial improvement.
Wow.
And President Stamps, I just want to say, you have been placed in a very challenging situation, and I appreciate you taking that on. One other question, you mentioned the dual credit. Could you share a little bit with the committee the relationship that KSU has with Frankfort Independent Schools on that and how that works?
Oh, we have a great relationship with them. We have our professors going into their schools, teaching their students. We have students who are graduating with an associate degree, and we did enroll some of our dual and credit students into this current class. And so we have a great working relationship with them.
Okay, thank you.
I would add one more thing. When I was there in 2016, we set up that relationship with Frankfurt Independent, and we even have students in the 9th and 10th grade working in some of our horticultural, agricultural areas and those CTE-related dual credit courses. And you may remember we were highlighted that year by Governor Bevin with some of our students doing that. So it's been a very progressive dual credit way of aligning truly to the outcomes that we wanted those students to have and hopefully come to KSU in the process.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions this time, so Greg? We've got one. Oh, yeah, Representative Graham, did not see you, sorry.
Yes, sir.
So I want to just kind of give an overview real quickly if I can, Mr. Chairman. And Greg, I know that you are a product of LRC at some point or another, and I appreciate you coming aboard and working with the university. I'm a graduate of the university, a proud graduate, a 1980 graduate, but I'm also a second generation graduate of Kentucky State. My mother and her brother both graduated, both were very successful people. My brother and sister and I all graduated from the university. We've been very successful people. And I just wanted to just kind of go down a path, if I could, Mr. Chairman, of just the history of what Kentucky State has done, not only for the people of Franklin County, but for this Commonwealth. When I arrived here in 2003, there were 5 of us who were people of color, of which Jesse Crenshaw, Arnold Simpson, myself, Gerald Neal, we all are graduates of Kentucky State University. Senator Thomas is not a graduate, but he's a professor there. But what people don't understand is that his mother and my mother were classmates and best friends and roommates. Senator Thomas's grandfather was in the administration. I think he was dean of men at one time. So that university has made connections, not only across the Commonwealth, but across the country. But to just kind of show my colleagues how important that university has been, not only to me, but the leadership that it's provided. And one thing that you haven't talked about, I think that you will, is about the aquaculture. It's considered not one of the country's best, it's considered one of the world's best.
One of the 2 world's best.
To the point that about 10 years ago, the director of the Aqua Center program was recruited by the Republic of Ireland to come there to boost their aquaculture program. And at the time, I was still teaching, and the students were at Franklin High with me. And he did not take the position for 2 reasons. Number one, he enjoyed what he had done and had done for the university, but also his kids were fighting against him going to Ireland. It was an opportunity, and he could have made a whole lot more money. But we've got universities who are wanting to copy what we've done. So that investment in that program has really made the university a worldwide center in terms of the experience and the information that they have gathered and researched. And that other universities around the state have talked about trying to implement that. And not only that, I first got here, the legislator from the West who made me knowledgeable about the research that they were doing with the Aquaculture Center that was helping farmers in the West to transition from tobacco to growing minerals and growing materials that can help with the Aqua Center at Kentucky State in terms of providing food. So the university expands beyond the one thing that it has done and that people don't understand. Many of those outside students who come into the university are really native Kentuckians. It was because their families could not stay here after they were educated. And so their parents who were business people, who were teachers, who were doctors, they had to go somewhere else, primarily to go to med school, or once they finished med school, they could not come back because they got job opportunities. but it was a method by which they would send their children. They would send children that they taught. So it is not something that outsiders are coming into. These are people who are native Kentuckians, or their parents were native Kentuckians, who have chosen to come back because of the experience that their parents and grandparents had. So the narrative needs to be brought to us as a legislative body, and how valuable in terms of the university being not only in the area of the office center, but also in teachers and doctors and lawyers and business people. And I think you highlighted that. But I want to thank you for taking on this challenge. This is a difficult challenge that you're taking on. But we got to get it right. And we got to make sure that we invest in those programs that we know are working, such as in education, such as in the business opportunities of which you talked about. We've got to focus on doing those things. But in order to focus and to build upon that, to modernize, we're going to have to receive the funding that we really need. And I don't think many of my colleagues understand that by us being an HBCU and a land-grant university, in the past we have not properly funded to match the funding that comes from the federal government. And as a result of that, we have not been able to really keep up with what we need to do, whereas other land-grant universities have been able to receive that. So all of those things need to be clear and present. But I think that what we're doing, I think President Thompson, you are working with the university very closely. I know Greg Rush, because he's a product here at LRC, having worked here and having worked with higher ed. So I thank all of you for the challenges that you're taking on. But we onward, upward. That is the goal. It's onward, upward. So thank you all so much, and I'll let him continue, Mr. Chairman. And I thank you for bringing me in and asking me to serve for the time being. And I look forward to working with you, and look forward to working with the members of this committee. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Go ahead and proceed, Greg.
Just to make a couple of follow-up comments on what Representative Graham mentioned, I think you get lost sometimes that, and I don't know the specific statistic here, but the majority of African-American doctors, lawyers, dentists, professionals came out of HBCUs, and I think it's important to keep that in mind. And also, there is a lag in national reporting on graduation rates, but if you look at the 37% graduation rate that you see right now, that would put, 2 years ago, that would have put KSU in about number 5 in the country. So I think that's important to acknowledge as well. Now, those rates move a little bit every year, so by the time we see the 21 numbers, it may be somewhere up or down from that, but it's a tremendously significant improvement over the past 5 years. Some of you have seen some of these slides before, so I'll try to move through them fairly quickly. President Stamps mentioned the situation and the leadership transition in July. I actually came on board July 26th as Chief Financial Officer, and President Thompson was kind enough to let me go over, kind of representing CPE for that last week there, on the week of July 20th. So I've actually been on campus since July 20th. And we immediately had to resolve a number of issues related to cash, which we'll get to in a moment on the slides. And essentially, the university didn't have sufficient cash to pay vendors and make payroll when we got there. We were able to work with CPE and the state budget office to advance the fourth quarter general fund allotment, which gave the university some breathing room and allowed us to go ahead and meet our commitments. And then, as President Stamps mentioned, we took a number of actions, hiring freezes, freeze on non-essential travel, and the university still does some travel. We have students to support, we have athletic events we're contracted with, but non-essential travel's been frozen, froze procurement cards, and we began to realign personnel, and she mentioned earlier that we've got about $800,000 in reductions to date on payroll. What we found initially was a lot of bills that had been carried forward from prior years. And basically in late 2019, the university began to have a cash problem and began to take some actions to manage that problem, which pushed it forward into future fiscal years, to be perfectly honest. There's a process with the state construction accounts where the Division of Engineering and Contract Administration within the Finance Cabinet manages construction projects for Kentucky State. And they'll manage the project, they'll pay the bill, the invoice will come to the university, and then will be reimbursed by the university from whatever fund source funded the project, university funds, federal funds, whatever. Again, beginning in 19, those reimbursements to the state stopped, and that has now totaled about $5.2 million that the university owes the state for those construction accounts. About $4.3 million of old year invoices carried forward into the current fiscal year, and there was a revenue anticipation note, which is a working capital tool that's not unusual for school districts to use, and some universities use them. It allows you to balance your revenues when you get your revenues sporadically throughout the year. But the thing with those notes, they have to be closed within the fiscal year, because essentially you're borrowing on revenues you'll receive within that current fiscal year. That note was not closed on June 30 and carried forward into the current fiscal year, and that was an immediate drain on current year cash. There's also the university instituted an asset preservation fee approved by CPE in 2019. That's a fee paid by all students. It's about $300 a student per year, roughly. And those monies have to be reserved for asset preservation projects, either for the project themselves or for debt service related to those projects. And those receipts were not reserved from 19 through 21 as they needed to be, so that's an obligation that the university's budget has to that fund within the university, so the revenues go for the appropriate purpose. This is information that we've had out there for probably a month, and that was the immediate situation that we had to deal with. And our focus the first month or two was stabilization of the university. Since then, we've had time to begin to look at the current year budget and do projections and walk through where we are. And we've worked with CPE staff to verify these projections, and I think they're comfortable with them as well. And based on prior year spending, the university was facing approximately a $9 million current year budget deficit in July when we got there. We've taken a number of actions and are trying to control costs as much as we can. We now think that deficit's between $5 and $7 million for the current year. And we're all committed to getting the university's budget back in line, but given the commitments we have to faculty contracts and other contracts that the university is committed to, and an effort to make sure we're providing appropriate services to the over 2,000 students that we're serving right now, we're moving methodically in approaching this budget challenge. We don't want to disrupt students' education, and a number of our partners that we're working with, both in the legislature and the CPE, I think, believe that the most important thing is that we continue to deliver services to our students. And we'll work through this budget problem as quickly as we can, but we want to do it in a way that doesn't jeopardize these students' education. The governor issued an executive order in July, and it directed the Council on Post-Secondary Education to work with the university to assess the financial situation, deliver to the governor an assessment of that situation, and to provide a management plan to develop a longer-term plan for KSU going forward. And that work is underway. We've been working very closely with CPE staff. As I said, they verify everything that I present to the legislature, to my board, because we think that's important right now to build credibility and rebuild trust. And we have opened all our records to them, and I think that process is working well right now, and we're being completely transparent on all financial issues with both the board and with CPE and with you all. And part of the thing in making sure the board has the information they need to make decisions on behalf of the university, we're working with CPE to restructure the university's budget where it's clearer and it's easier for folks to follow. Our current budget structure lumps a lot of things into one pot, and so it's not often easy to see where those funds should be dedicated and how they should be used. So we're developing a new budget structure with the guidance from CPE to separate these budgets out, so it's clear for the board to see how much is being spent on kind of the education piece of the budget. What do we spend on auxiliaries, which is our residence halls and food service, and those ideas? Are we preserving the asset preservation money and using it appropriately? And one that's always an issue that people are very focused on is the land grant match properly segregated within our funds, and is it properly applied to the federal projects for which it's required? And as part of this, there will be board approval required to move money between these budgets. So if a decision is made to take funds from the auxiliary budget that could be used long-term to maintain residence halls and move to another activity of the university, that needs to be transparent, and that needs to be a decision that the board's fully aware of the implications of making that decision. And part of this is we're restructuring what the board receives at each meeting. And some of these, I think some of these items I would recommend the board always receive, and some of them are probably until we get through the next couple of years. But one of them is our cash position compared to prior year. So the board knows every meeting the cash that the university has available, how that compares to prior years, and then it'll be my job to explain why and where we are. An aging schedule of payables, that the issue with the $4 million in bills that carried forward from the old year, I don't believe the board was particularly aware of that, and I think that's been an issue for a couple of years. And so it's important that we show them where we are each board meeting on vendors, because also this is a relationship issue within the community, within the vendor community that we work with, and basically you got to pay your bills, and we have to pay them on time. And we have to show that we are. Accounts receivable, you know, we've got a little bit later here in our presentation, we're going to talk about student accounts receivable, and that's something that the board needs to see every meeting and be aware of that as well. And they also now receive reports on personnel actions, separations, hiring, salary changes, those kind of things, so they're aware of what's going on. And we're continually working with the council on this packet will be supplemented with a number of additional reports. We're working with them on what's most appropriate and most useful. They have someone that they've brought in, Susan Krause, who's a former treasurer of the University of Kentucky. She's been incredibly helpful as we've gone through this process. She has a wealth of knowledge on this type of issue and has been extremely helpful for us. And we'll continue to work with her and with council staff on getting this information that the board needs in a verifiable way that the board members can have confidence in. Brief update on our residence hall. This was approved. This is a P3 project, so it's a public-private partnership with CRM, who is the same company that built the building on Sauer Boulevard for the state and the Mayo Underwood building down next to the transportation cabinet downtown. And this project was approved by the Capital Projects and Bond Oversight Committee in April. Construction is well underway. We're on track for completion in January of 23. Financing was sold on July 27th for the project. The interest cost was 3.11%, which was less than what the consultants had estimated in April. The sale was not rated by Moody's, partly because the intercept provision in statute, I think a determination was made that doesn't apply to P3 projects, or at least one structured like this. And so we worked with the finance cabinet to put a memorandum of agreement in place that replicates the statutory intercept provision, but it was still felt, I believe, by Moody's that it wasn't advantageous to rate. So we the issue was insured by an insurer, which managed to bring the interest rate down. First lease payment will be due in March of 24. It'll be an annual payment of just under $3.8 million. Our projected semester rates are approximately $4,600 per bed. That's high for us, but it's comparable with the residence halls, particularly the newer residence halls at some of the other Kentucky universities. And now we've been asked to provide information on a couple of things I'll go through here. One is student balances, and that number moves every day. because as financial aid's applied, as students pay bills or make payments on payment plans. So we thought the clearest thing was to pick a point in time and show you the trend over the past 10 years for that point. And so we chose the last week of September. A lot of financial aid has typically been applied by then, so it's a pretty good time to look at this. Although the number will continue to decline typically over the semester as students make payments. You can see that prior to President Burse's arrival, he came in 14. The balances had risen significantly, and these are balances of enrolled students, currently enrolled students. So they were approaching $5 million in 13. That dropped dramatically in 14 and 15, and began to increase a little bit at 16 because we took a different philosophy in managing student accounts, and we took more chances on students that we felt had a financial path if we gave them till the end of the semester to work through that. But then as you see from 16, the balances have continued to increase. We have begun to bend that curve down a bit. And one of the things we'll talk about when we talk about HERF funding is one of the things that was allowed with the federal funding that we received for COVID relief is the ability to pay down student balances that were incurred from spring of 20 through the end of last summer. And the philosophy behind that is there were a lot of financial challenges for our students during COVID, and the federal government has allowed us to essentially pay those balances down. That was done first week of August, and we were able to satisfy about $2.5 million in unpaid student balances. Benefited the students because the idea was that it would make it easier for us to keep students in and allow students to progress, and I think that's been true. And it also worked to reduce balances overall. And the second chart are the average balances by student. So we've again begun to bend that curve down. That typically takes a couple of semesters of working with students and setting expectations. And we believe we'll continue to make progress on this over the next year. You'd asked for an update on the Higher Education Emergency Relief Funds. These are known as the CARES Act. And the university has received about $27 million in CARES Act funding. There are significant limitations on that funding. A significant portion, about $4.5 million, goes directly to students. We are behind in getting the first two pots of that. The first pot went out on time. The second pot did not. And we're actually working to get it out along with the third allotment of money that we received a few months ago, and get all those out next week, actually. And then that will have satisfied all our requirements. And the third tranche of funding is still within the window for distribution, so we're on time with that one. And these, a lot of it went toward the kind of things that you've heard from other universities: enhanced sick leave, extra staff time to do cleaning, PPE testing. We did student refunds. We've been able to recover some in lost revenue. Last year, we had to reduce occupancy in the residence halls significantly, and we used supplemental housing with the hotels to do that. And so that was paid through here. The debt forgiveness we talked about, some other tuition work with students, and IT. A lot of IT infrastructure is eligible for improvement. And one of the things that we learned, as many campuses learned during COVID, is our IT infrastructure went under a tremendous strain when we began to do more things online and more hybrid classes and more online classes. We have about $15 million of HERF funds remaining as of the end of September. As we mentioned, we're getting ready to do a fairly significant distribution of student emergency aid. We expect that to be a little over $4 million. That's estimated because we know the current number of students that will be eligible, but we have to make this available to previously enrolled students as well, and how many of those apply we're not sure, so that's an estimated budget. We anticipate about $3 million in technology upgrades, and that the infrastructure on campus is just not able to support the load if we had to pivot back to either a hybrid model or online instruction. So we have a number of technology upgrades planned. None of these items yet have been approved by our board, so this will be presented to our board in October as well. So this is a budget right now. It's not definite. We're able to replace door locks in our residence halls, and a lot of these things are designed to reduce touch, to reduce the number of times that staff have to be in buildings or that people have to be in spaces, and so going to where the students will be able to use their IDs to get in and out of the residence hall room is helpful. HVAC improvements are allowed. We have an immediate problem you may have read about in the press with our oldest residence hall. No, not our oldest, our largest residence hall that dates to the 60s with biological growth and humidity issues. And that those things make the situation for potential infection with coronavirus worse. So we're working with DECA and the Finance Cabinet to improve the air quality in that building. It'll be outside air, filtration, humidity control, all the things that will improve that. It is allowed, HVAC improvements are allowed under CARES Act funding. We also have money set aside for vaccine incentives. We're still working out the details there, but we want to encourage as many of our students as we can to get vaccinated. And I'm going to skip over the next one and come back to it. We have identified approximately $7 million of additional HVAC upgrades throughout campus that deal with air quality, filtration, and all the things that are related. We don't anticipate having enough money to do that, but we would like to go as far as we can with that. We're a few months away probably in working the details of that out, and would be bringing it back to both the Secretary of Finance and, well, first CPE, then Secretary of Finance, and then Capital Projects and Bond Oversight Committee, if we decide we can move forward with that. We've reserved a little over $1 million right now in case there are future flare-ups. We've actually had a good fall. I know that it's been challenging for all of us, but on campus, it's been more manageable this fall than it was last year, and we're hoping that continues, but we need to reserve money in case it doesn't. And we don't know exactly what we'll be facing when students come back in the spring. And should we have more direct COVID-related expenses, this budget will have to be adjusted, and we'll have to redirect money, because that's always got to be the first priority, is the health and safety of our students. All these things are related to that, but some more than others, and those have to be our priority. And that's all I had, Mr. Chairman. And I don't know if President Thompson was making comments, or you want him to?
Go ahead.
Just about 1 minute worth. We're in the process, as you well know, in addition to looking at all the financial oversight and the management plan that we're putting together, we're looking at restructuring a lot of stuff. The way we're doing academic services, student services, but we're also looking at putting forth what I consider to be state-of-the-art programming for the sustainability and thriving of KSU, especially around the School of Education, maybe redoing public administration, look at governmental affairs, public policy that serves the state, doing some adult learning stuff around competency-based education. Bottom line, this is an HBCU that's still important, Representative Graham, to not only the state, but to the nation and to the world. And my argument is, let's figure out how to make it exactly what we need for it to be in that self-sustaining, independent way to give us another 135 years of wealth. And so we're working closely with them. I won't take up any more of the time today, but would love to talk to you more in depth about this. But it's been fairly seamless working with the board and with the interim administration in making some of this happen. And I'll leave it there since we're short on time.
Thank you for your presentation. I've got a couple of questions initially, then we have some member questions, and I may have some more. What is the total budget for KSU at this point, and how much of that comes from state appropriation?
Total expenditures for the last couple of years have been around $70 million, and that includes about $27 million in state appropriation. Over $8 million of that is reserved for land grant match. So the actual state appropriation that's available for educating students is around 18 to 19 million.
Okay, and I know land grant match was mentioned. Last few budgets, we've had a bit of an ordeal we're getting a revised number when we're about to finish the budget. But I believe that the process we put in this time, do you believe it's going to correct that situation?
I hope so. We are, and where that comes from is when the federal budget is released and they increase the amount of federal award available to the university, and it's hard to predict that, and that's been our challenge in the past. I think right now you're going to see a current year appropriation for us again, but hopefully we'll be able to work through that where next year it won't be necessary.
When do you anticipate being able to have your proposed budget for the executive branch budget? You have any idea when you're going to have this narrowed down and have a final number?
We believe now we have the final number that we talked about, that 21 to 23 million, and we are working with CPE to get our budget submitted by the statutory deadline.
We plan on the October 19th special call meeting at KSU to present them with as close to a final budget. We'll also be asking them to approve the Presidential Selection Committee, which CPE is kind of taking that on, and the search consultant. So we hope to have everything in place by November 15th, sir.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from Representative McCool.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a brief comment, then I have a little question. I want you to know that Kentucky State University is essential for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. So thank you for your transparency and your bold steps and going forward and what you're doing. And I really, with retention, and that's one of the best ways you can do to have that revenue coming in is retain what you've got. But one of the questions I've got is with accreditation. Is that an issue, or are you dealing with SACs, or is there anything we need to do in the future to help with that process?
We are in full communication and has been transparent with Hvac COC. We are not in any jeopardy. Our provost has been in contact with them, as well as Dr. Sneller on our campus. She's our liaison, and so we're in full compliance and accredited through 2029.
And I've had a chance to talk with Belle Whelan, who's the head of SACS, directly about this. She's fairly complimentary that CPE has taken on an active role here, so we're looking really good with SACS COC.
Thank you, and that's really good to hear as well. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This time we have a question from Representative Graham.
I just wanted Greg to go back to when you start your presentation, and I'm sorry that I didn't give you the opportunity to do that and make my comments, but
Representative Graham, is your mic on?
no, it's not, but I'm using my teacher voice, so I'm sorry. You talked about the budget when you came in and how the members of the Board of Regents were not provided with detailed information that they needed, and that you incorporated a new system where it broke down every area in terms of the budget. Was that a system that was put in place with the previous administration?
That's the way the budget has been presented for quite a while.
Okay.
But I think given the situation that we have now, it needs to be more discreet and it needs to be more transparent. And the budget that the board was presented with in June was a balanced budget, but immediately the cost projections that we saw were well over the numbers that were in the budget. And the revenue numbers are tracking relatively closely. So I think on the revenue side, the budget was reasonable. But the payroll that was currently in place and the contracts and the level of expenditures that were predicted for the year were well in excess of the budget numbers that were presented to the board, in my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And also, we've not gotten the new structure in place yet. We need to actually have a resolution to this issue, I think, before we present another budget to the board, because right now all we have is what we have.
Yeah.
And we report to them or we're going to begin reporting to them on where we are in relation to that budget.
Well, I have no doubt that it will be done based on your experience in working not only here at LRC, as I mentioned earlier, but in the higher ed area. So I thank you for taking on this challenge.
And explicitly said too, we feel like it should be broken down in this discrete way, because if not, some things could be hidden just with the bottom line numbers.
Yep.
And that's what it looked like they had received, the board and CPE, to be honest with you. And so we feel at CPE, along with KSU, let's break it down so discreetly that you can ask the questions that need to be asked at a discrete level, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Our next question is from Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do appreciate y'all jumping into the frying pan, so to speak, because I've been there before and it's not easy. Sometimes you can get burned, but hopefully we'll work together to help make sure the scars are permanent. But I do appreciate what y'all are doing, because I know it's a difficult task. Two questions. In the slide 15, you talked about imbalance and in the budgetary items. Is there anything in terms of deferred maintenance that y'all have identified with the facilities?
You want me to do that one?
Yeah, please.
We have, like all universities.
You have no idea the question you just asked.
I opened up a bag of words. All right.
We have, like all universities, tremendous deferred maintenance, and ours. Everybody will say theirs is the worst, so I'll say that too. But we estimate we have anywhere from 100 to 150 million in deferred maintenance. Now that's a smaller number that you'll hear from many campuses, but that's a big number for us. We're pretty small. Our newest residence hall dates to 2007, and it was newest probably by 30 years. So our housing stock is quite old, and we have challenges every day keeping chillers running, keeping electricity on in some buildings. We have, as we talked about, we have humidity issues. We have a number of issues within the campus. We have done what we can. We implemented an energy savings performance contract about 2 years ago, which made a lot of improvements to kind of the underground infrastructure, a lot of boilers, chillers, water pipes, those kind of things. But those can only go so far. And we are very appreciative of the General Assembly for a $5 million appropriation last budget to work on roofs, because I can count 7 or 8 buildings right now that leak when it rains. It actually leaks on our basketball court, which is challenging. And we have a small tree growing out of the roof of one of our buildings, so which we've got to resolve that. But and that $5 million will help, but it will probably only do 3 or 4 of our buildings. And when you look at our buildings on the inside, many of them were built in the 80s, and they look like they were built in the 80s, because we've not had the resources or been able to put aside the resources to address those issues over the years.
I appreciate the candor, because I understand there's a lot of universities have that, but I understand given your budget, it's a higher percentage and it's a harder thing to swallow. And we'll do what you can to help y'all out, to help to address those things. Which I want to maybe, this might be the same answer that you'll give based on my question here, because I asked Dr. Thompson and Dr. McFadden in terms of what are some of your cost containment strategies and so forth, and it sounds like you've answered that to a certain degree. Is there anything else that I'm missing, or you want to highlight on that?
No, I think at this point it's been and one of the things that we've asked to work with CPE on is a benchmarking of personnel. So given a university our size, how many people should we have doing certain things? And we're working with CPE. That's going to take a little while, but that's how we hope to realign and rework our personnel budget. And we may have people working in the wrong places we need to move around, and some of those things I think will be important as we move forward into the next year and bring our budget back in line. And if I can go back to the capital question for just 1 minute, because there's one thing I really think I should have brought out that I don't think has been talked about, because we talk about enrollment and growing enrollment, and obviously that's important for us. But we're essentially capped at enrollment right now due to housing. And even when our new residence hall opens, we probably will not have the ability to take on additional enrollment because, everybody wants to grow out of this kind of issue, and we'd like to too. But given the number of bed spaces we have on campus, we're pretty close to our maximum enrollment. And when we get into, the academic programs we'd like to expand, nursing is a prime example. We're capped right now because of the size of our educational facilities for nursing. We turn students away because we don't have the capacity to educate everybody that comes in, given the size of our teaching space for nursing.
And I would never want to disagree with my good friend here, and I'm not. I agree with him, but he's talking about residential enrollment. There's some ways we can think progressively about doing some adult learning. Representative McCool, Representative Tipton, some stuff serving the state, the city of Frankfort, and some of our other municipalities. So we have to triangulate this. We have to get the right butts in the right seat, make sure everybody's in the right pay scale, all of those things. But we also have to look at our academic programming as serving the core of what HBCUs should serve, and that's what Greg's talking about, and that's good. But also, we can make a top-notch, what I consider an adult learning-focused group serving some other populations that will help the bottom line also financially of that campus. So we need to look at this in a more holistic way, I think.
And I would just add an investment in our infrastructure for our technology and our broadband would also help us with our expanding our services digitally and online as well.
Absolutely.
I have a couple other questions here. Going back to your student balances, you shared the numbers, and obviously I'm well aware of what happened back prior to 2015. At that time, the balances went down, but the enrollments went down tremendously as a result of that. On your current student balances, a two-part question. Number one, how many students currently have an unpaid balance? And secondly, going into and we've talked about this is for the sake of the committee, going forward in the next semester, what policy will you have with students who are enrolling next semester with unpaid balances?
I'll have to get you that number. I don't have that with me. It's and I roughly know what it is, but I'm afraid I'll pick the wrong number, but we'll get that to you. Going forward, it's going to be important that students clear their fall balances before they're allowed to register for the spring. And I think that's a policy that most of the universities follow. You work with students, you try to find external sources of funding, you may look at institutional aid, and we'll do everything we can to help our students, but we need to have the balances down before we register for the spring. Every case is individual. So I hate to make a blanket statement because you always have to work with individual students, but our goal is that the balances be cleared before they are allowed to register for spring. And actually, we're telling students that they will need to move out of the residence halls for Christmas if they don't have their accounts cleared and if they aren't registered for spring classes.
And obviously, there comes with that the potential enrollment may decrease.
It is possible, and that's something that we have to consider as well.
Okay. One other question, and I'm just going to go ahead and ask it. Shortly before President Brown left KSU, he received a new contract. That's been talked about in the media. When President Brown left, was there any kind of severance package, or is he still receiving any kind of income off his contract that he had?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Any other member have questions at this time? We appreciate your diligence with us. I know we've been seeing and talk a lot to each other. Greg and I texted on Sunday afternoon the other day. So appreciate all you're doing. At this time, if there are no other questions, we'll proceed to our next item. And I want to thank our final presenters for being very patient, waiting to get to their turn on the roll. But we have some presenters that are here to talk to us about Teach for America. We all understand and You all can take turns coming to the table, however works best for you all who are presenting. But we all understand that we do need more teachers in our classrooms in Kentucky, and they're here to share a little bit about their Teach for America program. So please identify yourself for the record.
Absolutely.
Do you have a slide presentation as well?
We do, Chairman. Wonderful to see you all this morning. My name is Stephanie Devine. I'm the Executive Director of Teach for America Appalachia. I will be sharing a presentation briefly, and I'm joined by some fabulous folks from Eastern Kentucky who will introduce themselves when it is their time to speak. But thank you again for your opportunity to present. I will be brief, as I know I likely stand between you and lunch, which I never want to do. Let's see here. Again, thank you so much for your time and for all that you've done to serve students and teachers across the state during this challenging season that we have been in. But I'm here today to talk to you about where Teach for America Appalachia has been in the last 10 years, what has been possible because of the legislature's generous allocation in the past, and what could be possible with an additional allocation in the future. So again, you'll meet my fellow colleagues here in a moment. I will note my colleague Jason Wheeler is absent with the flu, but we will present in his stead this morning. So just to give you a sense of where we've been at Teach for America Appalachia, we've been serving Eastern Kentucky for the last 10 years. And in those 10 years, we've placed over 175 of our nation's top leaders to teach and lead and live in Eastern Kentucky. And while those folks come to the region to meet really critical vacancy needs, STEM, foreign language, and now we're even seeing elementary school needs and preschool needs and special education needs, what's really remarkable is that folks like these people come to the region or come home to the region and become deeply embedded in those communities. They work with veteran teachers, administrators, community leaders to accomplish some of the things that you're seeing on these slides. That in just 10 years, we've doubled the growth rate of CCR in counties where Teach for America has been placed, as you see among many other accomplishments that fine folks like these are able to do. And while we're very proud of that Eastern Kentucky teacher placement, I think it's also important to note that there are over 275 Teach for America alumni living in the Commonwealth. They work in education, they work in entrepreneurship. You might recognize people like our friend Dr. O.J. Oleka, a proud Teach for America alumnus, Jeff Marietta, who leads Invest 606 in Eastern Kentucky, and again, many of our teachers who remain in the classroom past their commitment, like Kelsey Tackett in Floyd County, who's in year 9 at her original placement school. I'll also note some of the numbers here around the number of students impacted by one teacher, which can range anywhere from 30 students as an elementary school teacher to 150 if you're a teacher like Gavin or Brittany in the high schools. And while we're very proud of that progress, working with partners like CPE to think about rapidly growing CCR rates and other post-secondary attainment in Eastern Kentucky, I think anyone here who is familiar with our communities knows that there is still much progress that needs to be made. When you look at where Kentucky ranks as far as low-income student enrollment in post-secondary, let alone attainment, and when you compare that to the amount of money that people make when they achieve post-secondary degrees, we know that more students in Eastern Kentucky achieving that readiness and success is going to be critical for economic mobility for those folks in the long term. So when we thought about our last 10 years, we thought about, well, placing teachers is wonderful. Doing great work like that is essential. But as we thought about our next decade, we set a very ambitious goal that over the next 10 years by 2030, we want to double the number of kids in Eastern Kentucky communities where we work to achieve post-secondary readiness and success. And to do that, we're going to do 3 things. First, you're going to hear us talk about how our bedrock contribution, teacher placement, can and must grow. We're going to also think a lot about retaining those folks. We're going to talk about how we're providing tens of thousands, likely hundreds of thousands of dollars in value to counties now by providing free PD and coaching. And you'll hear about our new College Success Coach program, which we launched in pursuit of this 10-year goal. So you'll see here the request of our allocation increase. And what I'm going to do for the next few slides is show you what was possible from the previous allocation, what could be true with the future allocation, and you'll hear from folks in the field. So first, when we think about growing and retaining this top quality workforce of teachers, in this last 1-year budget, along with the work of our wonderful advocacy team who's joining us here today from Babbage co-founder, the legislature granted us a $500,000 allocation. And even in the 1 year that we've had since that allocation, we were able to increase our teacher force by 25%. We were able to see not only increase in geography of our placement, but increase in the scope of where we place teachers. And again, we launched the Mountain Teacher Fellowship, which is a program that keeps our best teachers for 2 additional years. So as you think about what's possible here on the right column, I'm going to let you hear from 2 of those leaders themselves who are a great example of what we could increasingly bring and keep in the area with an increased allocation. So I'll pass it on to Gavin and Brittany.
Hi there, I'm Gavin Pilo, the criminal justice and law teacher at Knott County Central High School. And before I was hired, my school district really struggled to attract any qualified applicants to my current position. My school district and I were not even on each other's radars. But through Teach for America and its networking, I was hired just days before the 2020 school year started. I immediately packed up everything I had and moved from Seattle, Washington to Knott County in Eastern Kentucky. And through classes like Intro to Law, Criminal Justice, Criminal Investigation, Law Enforcement, and Corrections, my students are able to earn college credit and also find inspiration in new ambitions and careers. So additional allocation for Teach for America would mean more teachers like me and more career readiness in Eastern Kentucky.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Brittany Curry. I'm currently in my third year teaching math at Letcher County Central High School. Unlike Gavin, I'm a native Kentuckian. I'm originally from Columbia, Kentucky, and relocated to Eastern Kentucky when I joined the Teach for America Appalachia Corps in 2019. The reason I joined TFA was because when I went off to college, I looked around and didn't see a lot of students like me. I was a first-generation college student from a low-income background myself and was very honored to even be accepted into college and to pursue my goals there. When I came back to Eastern Kentucky to teach in the mountains, I absolutely fell in love with the place. I got involved in a local church community. My school community took me in. I made lasting relationships with my administrators and other individuals out there. And because of that, I've decided to stay in the region. Through the inaugural Mountain Teacher Fellowship program that Steph has mentioned, I have been granted an additional 2 years to stay in the region, continue teaching and improving my craft. And I've also been provided with a financial award that has allowed me to kind of build my own financial security that I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise without the fellowship.
Thank you so much. They are, again, just two of many incredible leaders that we're able to bring and keep in the region. So I'll just briefly speak to this professional development and coaching model. As many of you know, the research increasingly points to the fact that teacher coaching is a really key lever, not only in teacher quality, but teacher retention. So right now, many of our districts are spending, again, a great deal of money sending their teachers on buses to Louisville, to Lexington for professional development, or potentially hiring one coach per district. But with the previous allocation that the legislature granted, an additional allocation, we can offer that to almost any Eastern Kentucky county at no cost to the districts. So you're eliminating redundancies, taking advantage of a resource that is valuable, that's proven, and we're doing that with relationships that already exist in those communities as opposed to bringing in or outsourcing that work. And finally, I'm so excited to talk about our College Success Coach program because while teacher quality and teacher placement really matters, again, all the research from folks like CPE would indicate that near-peer mentoring is a really critical lever to getting low-income students to and through college. So on top of our teacher work, we launched a College Success Coach program in 17 high schools, growing our county geography from 17 to 25 in just 6 months. And these college coaches work with over 850 students right now. And in their inaugural year, you'll see the numbers of what they achieved. We're seeing that this near-peer mentoring component is a real game changer for students when coupled with strong teachers. And in the future, with an increased allocation, we could double the size of that cohort, as well as add in a new program, Peer Forward, which is a nationally proven program to provide support to students in grades 9 through 11. But rather than hear from me, I'd love to introduce you to Ashley Morrow, one of our top-performing college success coaches in Knox County.
Hello, my name is Ashley Morrow, and I'm the college success coach at Knox Central. And as a first-generation resident from Pulaski
Could you
County.
pull the microphone a little closer to you? That helps the folks who are listening online. Thank you.
Sure, yeah. So, hello, I'm Ashley Morrow, and I'm the college success coach at Knox Central. And as a first-generation person from Pulaski County, I can assure you that I needed a mentor when going through the college process. And so some of the services that I offer my students at Knox Central are mentoring and financial literacy, FAFSA workshops, ACT workshops, college tours, different various things. And all this stuff has, while striving to build resiliency and grit in them. And so this approach has been proven successful with 68% of my at-risk students starting college this fall.
Thank you so much, Ashley. We're so proud of what Sher and her 16 fellow college coaches are doing. So in summary, again, I want to make sure I honor your time, committee members and chairman, but in summary, the allocation that we've gotten drove a remarkable progress. There are things that are possible now that were never possible a year ago. And yet, we know that that is not sufficient work and progress given what is true for kids in Eastern Kentucky. So when we think about the future, this partnership that we could deepen with the KDE and the legislature could increase our teaching workforce, not only the ones we bring in, but the retention of those teachers. I want to pull out in particular the growing special education placement need we're seeing. So with an increased allocation, we could now show up to districts and say, we will now certify in special education as well, which would be a massive contribution. And again, partnering with districts to offer free PD and coaching at no cost, growing the college success coach model. But I think what matters most to me and what keeps me up at night is I would love to see a world where in 2030, Eastern Kentucky is the global proof point of rapidly increasing the number of kids who get to and through college. And I think that's possible with partnerships like ours. So thank you for your time, and we welcome any questions that you have.
Yes, just to clarify so everybody's here, Teach for America is requesting to double the appropriation from the General Assembly.
Yes, Chairman.
Current budget, okay. Going from $1 million per the biennium to $2 million for the biennium.
Yes, Chairman.
Okay. We have a question from Representative Bojanowski.
Yes, thank you. So I'm a special education elementary teacher, and I mean, from my heart, I thank you for dedication to the children and so forth. So my concerns with Teach for America as a program model are in no means directed towards each of you who are educators. So I understand that Teach for America candidates get 5 weeks of training, and they are not required to be in any sort of a training certification program.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for your service as a special education teacher. That's what I taught, and I think it is the most important job in the world. So thank you for your kind words. Our teachers receive training starting from the day that they are enrolled in our program, which ranges anywhere from January to March. They get 5 weeks of what you're referring to is very commonly known as Institute. It's sort of the centralized training that they get. But our teachers get 2 full years of intensive one-on-one coaching and professional development. They have the same requirements around testing and certification that their peers do, who are traditionally certified. So I can't speak to all Teach for America regions, but in our region, there's a very robust PD program that exists through the duration of their time. And they don't receive full certification in the state of Kentucky until they complete a 3rd year, which involves additional certification requirements. So certainly they're held to the same standard as their peers in that way. But happy to answer any technical questions you have on top of that.
Okay, so if I may. So is that an internal program and it's not through the state, correct?
Yes, we provide that directly to our participants.
Okay, so if I may continue. Yes, so Teach for America teachers do not have to go through the same state certification process. They don't have to go through teacher training program in a university. They're only having a 2-year commitment, which does in turn create some churn in school buildings that is disruptive. Now, this last year and a half has been nothing but disruptive, but I'm speaking as the model as a whole. Education's a profession, and education professionals need a professional education, and our children deserve professional educators. So I do have grave concerns about the Teach for America model. My question is financial. So the general fund appropriates $500,000 per year to Teach for America. According to your map, we have 35 current Teach for America members, which would equate to about $14,286 per teacher if we divided it per the number of teachers. So do the teachers also get the same rank 3 salary as a certified teacher? Are there any additional fees for districts who request Teach for America teachers? And then also, how much does Teach for America receive in corporate donations? So how much Other Monday is funding things?
Sure. Well, first, if I may address your concerns, I want to just empathize with the fact that I was a traditionally trained teacher. I went to school for special education, and I shared many of your concerns when I learned about Teach for America. I, in fact, was a pretty vocal critic of it in my undergraduate years. I ended up doing Teach for America as a way to achieve employment in Baltimore, where I'd wanted to move for some time, and I thought, I'll just do this program, right? It'll help me out. And what I've truly found in my time, both as a traditional educator with my undergraduate and graduate degree in education, I've seen that what Teach for America's model do is it tries to find proven leadership skills in people. So we're taking the top 10% of college graduates. We're looking for people who have proven that they can lead a team, achieve measurable results, and who have expertise in a content area. So Brittany here studied mathematics at Rice University. I feel quite confident in her ability to teach math. But what we've really seen is that we can focus on the pedagogy aspect of things in our coaching and our PD model because we know that our folks are proven leaders, that they have content knowledge. So I appreciate your concerns, and I certainly shared them when I began my journey. So as a reminder, the allocation not only supports the work of our teachers, but also the work of our college coaches, the work of PD and coaching. So when we think about dividing that, it's not necessarily a particularly helpful number to think about like what a teacher costs. And that also varies when you think about recruitment, where the teacher is from, what it costs. Some folks get transitional grants and loans to help move here. Teach for America is a national 501c3, so I can't speak to your corporate donation at the broader national level. But this year we received a private gift that matched the state allocation, so we are constantly leveraging private funds. The reality that I know the chairman and I have talked about is in Eastern Kentucky in particular, private philanthropy is dwindling at a rapid rate. We don't have the tax base, we don't have the wealth, so we are certainly always leveraging additional corporate and private funds, but the state allocation has been foundational in our ability to maintain and grow our program. Did I answer all of your questions?
There's one. The salary for...
Oh, yes, thank you. I've written that down. So our teachers do receive the same rank 3 salary as other professionals. We do have some teachers who come in with an education background or a master's or degree or PhD, so they would get the rank salary according to that. Districts can pay anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000 per teachers as a recruiting fee. We have seen in some communities, if that's a real barrier to getting a teacher, we can find philanthropic means to ease that burden as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And our final question
Yes.
of the day from Representative McCool.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to make sure I understand that the funding for this is paid for through the legislative body. So there's no or very low expense to the local school districts to
Very low to little. As Representative Beljakowski asked, the districts can pay anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000 as a recruiting fee when we place that teacher initially, but there is no other cost to the district in any way.
Then the other question, just real quickly, is I've seen the county that you had listed up there. How do other counties get engaged or involved in this?
That's a great question. So counties reach out to us directly, and every year we have between 60 and 75 unmet requests from counties. So again, with every allocation increase, we can increase our geographic ability to meet new counties, to engage with new folks. So happy to give a business card if you know any superintendents who'd love to chat with us. But I will say right now, we have a much higher demand than what we can meet. So we have not pursued new district partnerships, but with an increased allocation, that could be a very different story.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
I want to thank all our presenters today and all our members for their participation. Our next meeting will be held on November 16th with Senator Wise chairing. The meeting's adjourned.
Thank you so much.